Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine, dropping in facts, observations and comments, all the while trying to guess what their favourite things about each episode might be.
Hello, I'm Richard Smith and I've been a fan of Doctor Who for almost 50 years. The first episode I remember seeing was Planet of the Daleks Part 6 in 1973, but as my dad was a regular viewer, I'm sure I was watching long before then. By day I work as an enterprise architect, which is a great job title for me as it embraces my boyhood love of Star Trek, along with my mother's desire to have an architect in the family. In reality, it means that I help define the technology strategy for a broadcast and telecommunications company. If you've heard of me at all, and you probably haven't, it'll be as the host of the podcast Something Who. For some reason, Toby keeps mentioning us on his podcast, even though I've refused to pay him a retainer. Something Who generally discusses two Doctor Who stories, one from the original series and one from the modern series, usually with some sort of thematic connection. We also sometimes do special episodes, such as interviews. I've chosen the two-part 10th Doctor story, Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. If you know anything about me, it's that I've generally watched each story once on original transmission, and this is no exception. I feel that I'm becoming a meta-fan, spending more time reading, watching, listening and talking about Doctor Who rather than watching the programme itself. But this story made a big impression on me when I first saw it, and it's still one of my favourites from the new era of the show. And rewatching hasn't changed that assessment. It's a very rich story, there's a lot going on, and it's perplexing in an interesting way. How does the girl in her room fit in with the Doctor, Donna, River and her team in the library? And just who is River, and what's their relationship with the Doctor? There's a real examination of the childhood psyche and the fears that persist into adulthood.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Happy Times and Places, and I'm going to take you to the library, so don't be too loud. I've chosen this one. I had loads of other different ones planned, and today I just thought I'm in the mood for this. It's an excellent story, although it is a story I remember at the time feeling, yeah, this is the one. It's good, but it's not quite to the standard of the previous Moffats, because the previous Moffats had always been my favourite of the season, and he's like, yeah, he always comes along, comes in, delivers, off he goes again. And I was feeling it was about time there was one that didn't quite, and it didn't, I liked it, but it didn't quite feel like it delivered the killer punch I wanted it to of the Stephen Moffat stories. And then I watched it again and went, actually, this is quite good. And then I remember watching it with my stepson. He'd just chosen it as one to watch, and watching the climax and really welling up and going, oh my good lord, why didn't I love this? This is still within the first sort of few months of it having been on, and it's been, pretty high up ever since. I still do see it as slightly anomalous in the Moffat stories, i.e. when Moffat is just the writer, not showrunner. And I don't know why. And of course, obviously now it has earned its place in history because of the continuation of River Song. And I might dig out. I was telling a friend of mine who had completely forgotten about this. She's a regular at my comedy club. Her name is Rachel Saunders. And I remember her messaging me and saying, oh, when are we going to see the River Song story next? And obviously we'll see this, unfold in a different order. I went, no. This is self-contained. They've told the story. It's the story of somebody meeting somebody for the first time and the last time, but it's different for both of them. Lovely idea. You could do it with time travel, but that story is done. We do not need to see her again. That is what that story is. And I genuinely thought that. So what the hell do I know? But I also remember telling a friend that there's no way that Mike in Remembrance of the Daleks would be a bad guy, and that they don't cast, good-looking actors to play heroic types for them to be bad guys, and he completely misunderstood it, and he didn't know how television worked. So, so what the hell do I know? Clearly nothing. None of us, as William Goldman said, nobody in this town knows anything. So with that in mind, I now demand that you listen to me for the next 45 minutes whilst I tell you things from a position of great knowledge, yikes, about This Doctor Who story, well, it's a two-part story, so the 45 minutes will cover the first episode, the very wittily titled Silence in the Library, because, although, of course, if it was to be later on, you think, oh, what, it's the silence in the library? No, they come later. But I suppose for young people who approach these stories in the way that I approached the earlier years of the show that were on before I was born or before I was cognizant of them, you could be looking back and go, oh, is that the first story of that? Because I remember watching The Silence in the Impossible Astronaut and that story arc. So is this when they first appear? And then, and if the world wasn't like it is now, when people sort of, swap stories and bootlegs and somebody go, have you got the Silence first story? What? The Impossible Astronaut? No, the Silence in the Library. Oh, they're not in that, really. These days of immediate information means that you can't really have those sort of misunderstandings or myths that might arise, or things that you just think because it's like you see there's a Dalek in the Space Museum and you think, is that a Dalek story, or then of course we knew that I had that clip of William Hartnell in the Dalek. You go, oh, that's the Dalek in the Space Museum, and then one turns up at the end to lead into the chase and you go, oh no, that's the Dalek that's credited in the space. Anyway, it's what I'm saying is, in a world that doesn't exist, something fun could have happened, but as it didn't, that was all pointless. So maybe silence is the best option. So let's in terms of pointless segues, let's have a bit of silence from me, and for all of us, let's have a bit of silence from Doctor Who. But it's the silence that takes place in the library. What a great title. He's a very, very clever man, is Stephen Moffat, which I'm sure we will witness and discuss over the next few minutes, 45 minutes. And I haven't actually mentioned Richard's podcast, Something Who, in quite a while on this podcast, so I will mention it now, even though he mentioned it at the top, because it is a really interesting, good listen. They have really thoughtful and very listenable and witty commentators, and juxtaposing one story with another can bring out aspects of it that you might not have imagined. So, yeah, a plug for that. But don't go there yet, because we've got to take something out of the library. 3 things. Richard and I have both got to take 3 things out of the library, and if they are the same thing, well, they'll have to be stamped for both of us as we press play on a story that was first broadcast terrifyingly in 2008, which means it is 18 years old, which means all the children in this are now grown-ups. Oh, good Lord. Well, I'm going to press play in 3. Oh, don't do a countdown. I feel like the clock is ticking ever quicker. Oh, so to the start of the story, and increasingly closer towards the pearly gates. Let's say 3, 2, 1. And of course, it's an intriguing opening. It opens in the dark, actually. But what a cast this has! I mean, that Colin Salmon is in this, and not part of the sort of main gang, is that hang around with the Doctor in the library, but this really weird sort of Dr. Moon character. And I'm not sure that this young lady has done anything else. Maybe she'd had enough of acting. Mark Dexter, of course, done loads. He's in Industry, and he returns in the in the Jodie Whittaker 2-parter with the Master, Spyfall. He returns in Spyfall. Why did I forget the name of a Doctor Who story then? This is a really intriguing opening, and of course we don't get a payoff to this till the next episode, but it's all of this stuff is very cleverly layered, and this in the moment is intriguing. Because we know that the Doctor isn't in somebody's imagination, but we also, feel for this kid, who's very well played, actually, and nobody seems to be being evil in these weird cutaways. So how is the Doctor in the mind of a child? And as I say, we don't get that payoff till the next episode. So that's already really, really intriguing. We know we're in for a story that has set up a head-scratcher. And as Stephen Moffat is wont to do when he is writing one story a year, these head-scratchers are fastidiously tied up and full of very clever revelations. I will hide nothing in my admiration for the way that Stephen Moffat does very clever plottings with Doctor Who. I was never all the way on board with some of his wider way of doing things with the series when he was showrunner, but I'll talk about that when we do one of his stories. Look at that beautiful lighting. So Eros Lin is back directing, and what an excellent director he is, having been on a very early block. He directed The Unquiet Dead and The End of the World, but so it's him returning to the fold and welcome. So he was actually a few years above me at university. I didn't realise it. I think he was in the third year when I was in the first year. He did actually send me an email about Who's Round, and at that point he said, it was so long ago, and it'd been like 3 years, but was not averse to doing it. But the trail went cold. I think he got busy. He got a job because he's a busy director, but he was certainly not against the idea. But of course, I should have become his best friend at university, but I didn't. I didn't even know he was there. But he is an alumnus of Manchester University, which has one of the corners of the universe that has bred some terrible things, including me, and including the actor Jeff Stretfield was there when I was there. The actor Raza Jeffrey was in my year. All sorts of guys before me, Rick Mail and Adrian Edmondson, Mira Sayal, good bunch of people, lots of casting directors. I should have really befriended all of them. Anyway, let's not get into this. I love this TARDIS team, but this looks effortless. I assume this is that's all kind of CGI stuff, is it? But it's the landscape is very, very good, and the world building is intelligent. I buy this whole environment, even though I did notice that the very opening shot of the girl over the library did have a little sort of green screen feel about it, which I'm not sure would have read so much at the time, because I was used to green screen where it looks like somebody had drawn in crackles around somebody. And obviously it's much better now, but I think you can slightly see with the way that it is lit and the slight way that it is overlaid. I think you can, if you've got an eye for it, pick out green screen, but not in the way that it's so embarrassing as it was in the 1970s. To me, as a kid, bad CSO was the thing that would stop me showing an episode of Doctor Who to somebody. And I remember seeing a thing at school. It was an advert for something or somebody, and I think it had some rhinoceroses walking down a high street, and there were none of those lines. And I remember people saying, that they've been overlaid over. I was like, no, because if it's CSO, you can see. And I couldn't believe that in a few short years we'd managed to make CSO so that it was invisible, but it really is compared to what it was. But funnily enough, now I do feel I can identify, and I'm not alone in this, I'm sure. I'm not saying I have a special talent. I am a seer. I have a sixth sense. But I do think it's possible to spot now, in the same way that Buffy the Vampire Slayer looked like the most modern thing imaginable when I watched it, and now you look at it and you go, I can see the joins in places. I love these two. I think they're great. They have a real rapport, and it's interesting. They have a sense of fun without ever quite undermining the adventure, because you have to be very careful with that. If you're watching people having too much fun, it alienates you, and it can be slightly irritating, and it certainly dilutes the drama. But I don't feel that with these two. I think Donna is an inherently funny person, and also annoying. But that's an achievement as well. Somebody who's a bit annoying and a bit selfish, but who you could sort of like. But she's a funny person, so she's funny in the situations, but she's not sending up the situations. And actually, when she's called on to be very true, Catherine Tate is absolutely superb. This is Sarah Niles, who's gone on to be extremely famous. And I think this is excellent. The fact that the face drone has this, it's reporting, it's quoting. So the run, for God's sake, run, and the arg slag and everything, that is bleakly, darkly funny. And again, a brilliant, I think, Moffat flourish, obviously with the connivance of the director and the actor, who've gone to, play back, but it's not. It's slightly human. It's a bit sort of, it's not quite uncanny valley because you can see the person's face, but it's all the more disturbing because of that, because it's not a blank screen. You do have its attempt to humanize the message, as it were, by having an organic looking face that has been, as we know, created from a sort of cadaver in a way almost, which is disturbing in and of itself. But the motivation behind it is to make it a more acceptable purveyor of information, and not like you're just soaking something up from a computer screen. But therefore, when it has to convey more than information, like the death cries of somebody or the warnings of somebody, it's almost more disturbing than seeing and hearing the real emotion, because we're slightly detached from it. It's a slightly dehumanized version of it. And I think that's really, really clever. That's Moffat being brilliant with science fiction ideas, saying, what can I put into this library that has a sci-fi element to it, that is unique to it, that then I can weld into the story, which he does, and these things pop up later. And he's very good at creating what on the surface just looks like it's a sci-fi idea to have a slightly more interesting computer interface, and actually it becomes important to the very cliffhanger of this episode. It doesn't do wood. You see that? It's really funny, but it's sort of dark humor at a point of danger. And now, here we are, back at the beginning. So we've sort of had the mystery explained, except we haven't, because we don't know what that is the girl behind it. Excellent design, by the way. It reminds me of the sort of Hinchcliffe, Roger Murray Leach kind of era, where instead of that monopticon thing being made of flashy lights and metal and neon and all that, it's made of mahogany, it's made of wood, and in a way that means it's timeless. Because it's got a retro element to it, it will never look as dated as if they'd attempted to make it really futuristic looking. And I think that's always a wise design concept. If we just run away from a power cut, you see, again, he's done gas masks, he's done there's a little shop. I love that. See, that's just a joyous running gag about the shop. He likes a little shop, and I like a little shop, I have to say. And I quite often go into a shop and I don't need anything, and I feel I should buy something. This is why I eat too many sweets, because sometimes I'll just buy a sweet. But yeah, so he's done gas mask, he's done tick-tock, the tick-tock that you hear when you're asleep, that's a scary thing. He's done the monsters under the bed, and now he's doing power cuts. He's so good at invoking something every day, and tapping into that childhood fear that was elicited. And if you're younger than me, you might not remember power cuts, but we used to get power cuts all the time, especially where I was in the middle of the countryside, when you used to have to light candles, and there was something very eerie about it, and you didn't know when the power would come back on. And I mean, nothing worked. This actor Joshua Dallas has, I think, gone back to the States and done quite a few things as well. So again, Doctor Who, right to the bottom of the cast list, getting people with great futures. I mean, Sarah Niles is in Ted Lasso. I've just seen her in the film Heads of State with John Cena and Idris Elba. But she's done loads. She's done loads of high-end TV. She's had an amazing career. And here she's talking Deadhead thing. And here, yeah. So, tick-tock clock, gas mask, and now shadows. Shadows and that dust stuff in streams of light. And gone, what if they're the bad things? And Now, this style of shooting, it's really interesting. This style of shooting and David Tennant's rat-tat-tat-tat-tat delivery really suits Moffat's writing, because Moffat often writes the Doctor in a million miles an hour, which, when you've got an actor like Tennant who can do exposition really, really quickly and efficiently, but also can give you the impression that the Doctor's mind is working fast, and his mouth is almost catching up with it. And then somebody like Eros Lynn shoots it by hitting a close-up and doing the cutting very quickly to suggest a flash idea here, flash idea there, this really suits Moffat's whip-smart, quick writing and dialogue. And here we have, and I like the design of these very white spacesuits. They look sort of like, spacesuits as we imagine them, but they are the sort of futuristic look, as juxtaposed with the wooden panels of the lighting of the library and of the set design. Although the lighting here is brilliant too. Look at those lovely blues, and there's greens in the corridor. And it's very clever that actually when we see them first, we don't see their faces behind. When we saw Anita there, and she says, "How do we know they're nano-androids?" You couldn't see through her mask, and of course, in the end, you can't see her through her mask, and that leads to a sickening and very sad twist. So it's really very, very well done, this. And I like a mission full of people who are all potential victims. That's my kind of Doctor Who. When you meet a load of people, you like them and you're sad when they die, especially when they're cast with lots of lovely actors. But we'll get to them when they get to do their bits, because this is Alex Kingston, who had been in ER and was a very well-known actress. She first came to my attention in Moll Flanders when I was at university. Hello, Anita. And River Song, who has become, a mainstay of the series. I know some people who don't like River Song. I like River Song. I understand people's difficulty with engaging with the style of humour and banter that the Doctor and River have. I know some people feel that it's a bit smug. I don't think it is, because I think there's enough passion and mutual respect and understanding between them, and they have a slightly sort of sarky sense of humour between them. But I like sarky, and I see sarky where some people see smug, which is a shame. And here we have Tallulah Riley as Miss Evangelista. Tallulah, Elon Musk's wife ×2. She is married to Elon Musk not once but twice. I love that. Brilliant, the way that they turn things up. And Steve Pemberton here as the leader of the expedition. He's we managed to get all the performing League of Gentlemen in Doctor Who. In the end, Rhys Shearsmith was the final one, but they're all fantastic actors. I'm not entirely sure this is the right part for Steve Pemberton. I think he's an amazing actor. But I know, I've got a feeling, didn't they? I'm sure in one of the commentaries they said he'd done it RP, and they decided in the end that wasn't quite communicating, and that he should do it Northern. And no, that's not to say you can't have, Northern rich posh arseholes. But it does show to me that there was a slight misfit potentially here, and there's some bits he does brilliantly. I mean, there's a bit in episode 2 that I think is really fantastic, but it doesn't. It's and as I say, I really like him. I think he's a great actor. I'm not sure this is the best use of him. Harry Peacock, son of Trevor. Trevor Peacock, of course, is yes, no, in The Vicar of Dibley, but a wonderful, wonderful actor. I'd encountered Trevor at the Royal Exchange Theatre, but I never had a proper conversation with him. He accidentally picked up my script for a play that I was in. And I'd said, "Oh, has anyone seen my script? If anyone finds it, can they?" And it ended up back in my pigeonhole with a note from Trevor on it saying, "Toby, I picked it up. I was really intrigued by it. I'm so sorry. I didn't realise it was." And I meant to say, because he was in the play before we were on, and I meant to say to him, "Oh no, Trevor, it's fine. And thanks for leaving the note." I still have the note. And also, while you're at it, talk to me about being custard pie wrangler in the year of the Sex Olympics, the Nigel Neal play. It's because Trevor was part of the founding of the Royal Exchange Theatre, and we were at the Royal Exchange when this happened. But many, many years later, he was doing Hobson's Choice with John Thompson. But anyway, I never spoke to Trevor, who this isn't anyway. Harry Peacock is the son of Trevor Peacock and the brother of Daniel Peacock, Nord Vandal of the Road from The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. But Harry Peacock's finest hour is as Ray Bloody Purchase in Toast of London. And also there's a scene where he does some Egyptian dancing in a play within the anyway, he's got excellent calf muscles. He's in good shape, is Harry Peacock, and he's a very funny performer. But he's not called on for his comedy chops here. But it's good to have him on board. I first saw him actually. He plays an English soldier in an episode of Band of Brothers, and I didn't know then that he was Danny Peacock, who'd been a favourite actor of mine as a kid because he'd been in the comic strip Presents, which I always watched and which was great. Sort of seemed daring comedy for when I was a youngster and we were allowed to watch Channel 4 because it was subversive. Anyway, I am going way off tangents, as I want to do. This is a great idea. The idea that somebody meets somebody they've never met before, and I think they do this very well. And she does have this sort of smug confidence, if you like, but she is obviously, seeing as this is the first time we've seen them together, you really do buy that they've had this long relationship and that she has this long bond and that she really cares about him. And also you buy that he hasn't got a clue what's going on. And there's something really moving about this, actually, that she meets this person that means so much to her and he doesn't recognise her. And I think we've all felt like this in different ways. I don't want to get too deep about it, but sometimes when you see somebody to whom you've been very close after a 10-year gap, when you lived out of each other's pockets and spoke each other's language and had a real bond, and you see them and they look at you in a way that hasn't recaptured that, and you hope that it would, and it's terribly sad, and there's something irrevocably and irretrievably lost. So I think it speaks to that, but its primary urge is to tell the story of she knows this guy really well, he's never met her before, she's meeting him for the last time when he meets her for the first time, which is an absolutely fantastic science fiction idea. It's a really clever use of time travel. I resist the use of time travel too much in Doctor Who, and for things to hinge on time travel. I prefer time travel to get us to the story and away from the story, and that is it. But I think for the setup of this, it's very well. And these scenes I think are really, really well done. But I remember thinking, gosh, it's a slight waste of Colin Salmon, who'd been in the James Bond films. He's in Prime Suspect 2. I remember when he was a newcomer, but he's a terrific actor, Colin Salmon, with high pedigree. And I remember being quite surprised because he did films and everything. And these sequences are really, I think, inserted into this very, very cleverly, because you're not quite sure, but they're never a sort of boring cutaway either. They're intriguing enough, and you have sympathy enough for the girl that you want to know more, but you want everything to be okay. And I love the way the Doctor talks to the kid as well. He's really good at that. I mean, David Tennant is at the height of his powers, and he's wearing glasses. I love it when the Doctor wears glasses. So we have this mystery in the library. We actually haven't. We have had a bit of danger, haven't we? Yet when they ran away from the lights going off. And yes, they were being a bit mean about Miss Evangelista being thick, and I think that's, you don't often see characters who are thick in television programs unless it's for a sort of plot point. And I don't see this as, she's not a bimbo character. You see bimbo characters on television, which is sort of slightly patronising sometimes. You know, the sort of the dumb blonde or whatever. But this, I think it would have been. It's very hard to do without getting accused of anything, particularly if it's a woman character, a female character, as the thick one, because but you can often see, sort of very simple, straightforward bloke types. But if they'd made her sort of not traditionally attractive and slightly sort of dumpy, people would have gone, oh yeah, it's the stereotype of the sort of Tasambika type of character, and yeah, you have to, that's not fair on the actress saying, yeah, you look like somebody who's thick. So instead you cast somebody who's absolutely beautiful, and then it's like, oh well, that's the stereotype of the stunning and thick. But I think the way that her lack of intelligence is played here is slightly away from the cliche, because actually we end up being very sympathetic towards her, and she's trying her best. And I think it's too easy to get distracted by that, going, oh, he's made the attractive character thick or whatever, or they've cast an attractive woman as the thick one. But actually what we read here, oh, and it's in the script, I'm stupid because I'm pretty, so they could never have, because I like the fact that she's sort of slightly self-aware of it. But I love the fact that Donna, for all her brashness, is the one, I mean, she still finds it funny, but who is actually caring and spots that this person needs trouble, that she needs, a kind word, and for all her awfulness, Donna is very kind. And I do think that the characters in modern Doctor Who are layered in that sense, is that somebody might have a primary characteristic, but when push comes to shove and the stuff hits the fan, their inherent decency comes out. And that's, to me, what Doctor Who is all about, is and again, it sort of goes against the current narrative that we have, where we're always on the lookout, it seems to me, for reasons to call out characters and bring them to account. Instead, what this does is sort of go, we all have our flaws. We can be bolshy, we can be selfish, we can be thoughtless, but deep down, when it all comes down to it, as we've done in terrible times, in times of war, and in times of poverty and national disaster, people dig deep, and their true selves actually are their kind selves. And so poor old Miss Evangelista, who I think is very sweet. She's not annoying. You could make the thick character annoying. She's and actually, the fact, and we judge them a little bit because we like Anita and other Dave, and let me get on to other Dave and proper Dave later. I love that joke. They are a bit unkind to her, and they're both nice people, but nice people I found myself being unkind about somebody the other day, in safety and in private and with a couple of other people. It wasn't going to get back to that person, but afterwards I thought, why did I yield to that? Why did I yield the temptation to say a thing about somebody where I could get a cheap laugh? Because I was in the company where I knew those people probably shared my views, so would give me a laugh. But I still came away from it feeling that I had been unfair and unkind. And I don't think I'm an unfair or unkind person, but in that moment I was. Now, maybe I did it in the safety, where I was in a safe place, so to be, but I still yielded to that instinct, and I don't think that reflects well. But the fact is, we all do it. And look at that brilliant angle as well. This is great stuff. We've got mystery, and we kind of know that people who wander off are going to get into trouble. But we've got sympathy for this person. She hasn't been set up as an idiot that we should laugh at. In fact, we have sympathy for her because even the nice people are kind of a little bit sort of rude about her. And Donna is our guide to say, well, actually, that it doesn't become us to be like that. And I think we all do that. And again, the good thing about drama is to sometimes prevent us with things that make us go, oh yeah, I do that sometimes, and I don't feel good about that. Not what a lot of people seem to want to watch of drama today, young people, which is just to confirm that how they behave and what they do is brilliant, and what everyone else does is bad. And I think good drama makes us confront the bad things in the contradictions within ourselves first, before it sort of it encourages us to point the finger at others, because if we learn more about ourselves through drama, that's when it's truly effective. Now, I remember in the trailer for this, in order to get a sort of scary out, it was that close-up of the skeleton. But because that's such a fast zoom in the episode, it's slightly slowed down in the next time trailer in the previous episode. And I remember it not quite reading properly because you could tell something had been artificially done to the close, or anyway, that out was not. It was not as an effective a moment as it is in this episode because it had been kind of repurposed to be in the trailer, and it didn't quite. And it had made me sort of come into this episode thinking, "Oh, I'm not sure this episode feels quite like it all fits together properly." Whereas actually, in this, it's superb, and this is one of the greatest scenes in the whole of Doctor Who. I find it profoundly moving. I'm a sucker for anything that gives life to the dead or enables people to speak to us from beyond the grave, or the profundity of looking at something and knowing that the person I'm looking at has since died, and I have that knowledge and they don't, and there's something about us all being preserved in amber and all of that sort of thing. And this uses a very smart science fiction idea, the idea of a data ghost, but the idea that we can somehow reach her, or can we? Is there some humanity there? And it means they can kind of commune with the dead, which makes this extremely poignant, but also really unpleasant. It's a mixture of disturbing and sad. I love Anita. I think she's really good, and we'll talk about her later as well. And I can't say, oh, this is so. I find this really moving, and I find it. I think it's a brilliant piece of writing. I think it's very human, but I think for this to be in a children's television program is so intellectually and dramatically ambitious. And where's that woman? She was nice to me. I find that the fact that she's acknowledged Donna's kindness that we saw before, which again shows into sharp focus the fact that everybody else around her was not so nice, and now they feel bad because she's dead now, and that's a reminder not to yield to those temptations, not to be nice to people or to be dismissive of people who aren't important, in inverted commas or in brackets or whatever. Help her. I mean, this, she's dead. Help her. I truly think this is one of the greatest scenes in all of Doctor Who. It's science fiction, it's humanity, it's disturbing, it's sad, it's clever. Don't tell the others, they'll only laugh, I think. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And actually it speaks to all of us, I think, particularly Doctor Who fans who are used to being laughed at, or are used to unkind things being said about us, or knowing that unkind things being said about us by friends and family. And then, of course, we have the science comes in to help us again, to slightly dehumanize it, to make it unpleasant, to make it unsettling. And then he throws in a joke because she says ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. So it's funny as well, but sadly, humanly, darkly funny. It's genius. He is such a good writer of that sort of thing. It's all played really, really well as well. The doctor's, I think the way the doctor puts his hand on her shoulder. And it is just a freak of technology, but Doctor Who is a show unlike any other in that can do this. And a reminder that this is a show that has to be suitable for, and to a large part aimed at, children. We're along for the ride, either because it reminds us of our childhood, or we watch it with our children, or or it reminds us what we were like as children, or whatever. But kids watch this, and I think the generation of kids that grew up watching this sort of thing was extremely privileged to have stuff of this quality. I think truly, truly brilliant, wonderful Doctor Who. And now we go to... He's such a hero. He's very good. I like the way he threw his torch, because he can't twirl a gun. It's got so much going for it, this story. It's clever, it's intriguing. It's well characterised, but it's fiendishly clever, isn't it? He's a brilliant writer, Moffat. Why was I not quite? I think it's because it wasn't quite what I expected. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know what to expect, and I can't remember how many. I certainly was getting spoilers. Well, spoilers. I was certainly reading the previews in Doctor Who magazine, but it was such a good time to be a Doctor Who fan. This is brilliant, and we're half an hour into the episode, and we need these scenes to now start kicking in and getting a bit drama. They need to stop being just intriguing. Who's this girl? And you have Dr. Moon there saying, right, we're half an hour into the episode. I need to up the ante, and he precisely does that. It's meticulously crafted, this episode. I defy anybody. I know I've got friends who aren't huge fans of Stephen Moffat's work for Doctor Who. I think he understands Doctor Who really, really well. As I say, when we get to him being showrunner, I have battles with myself about the timey-wimey nature of the storytelling, but that is a symptom of the fact that he really applies his very smart mind to how the show can work and what you can do with the show to produce surprises and clever storytelling and moments that make you jump out of your seat. Alex Kingston is automatically brilliant. And Catherine Tate is a great, great antidote to anything that gets too sort of mawkish or meaningful. She's healthily prosaic, which I think is delightful. And of course we throw that little moment of doubt in about what happens to Donna. And what happens to Donna is she doesn't die, but it's beautifully set up to have a wider story. And there's something brilliant about this, because another thing that was scary when I was a kid were piranhas. I used to get terrified of going into water because my brother had, I think there were books where piranhas ate people. I think there were TV episodes of TV serials and films where piranhas stripped people to the bone, and there was a film called Piranha, but they were scary before that, and they looked terrifying as well. But yes, piranhas were a sort of staple of a certain kind of drama, and they were terrifying. So again, this sort of taps into that primal fear of a creature that can, before you know it, strip you of your flesh. So we've got piranhas living in shadows. Vashta run, just run. I mean, that's that's if the doctor's advice is that the only thing we can do is run. And the little shop looked like it was just going to be a joke, but yes, the little shop is of course on the way out, because there will be Vashnadharada gonks and library keyrings and other Dave and proper Dave. I mean, it's sad that there always had to be the person who was going to be the first to go, and it's Harry Peacock. It's proper Dave, but that is a brilliant joke, because so rarely in a Doctor Who or in any television, it's one of the golden rules of script writing: don't give people similar names, because it's confusing if people have similar names. Now, The Wire did do that, and you can sometimes have. Well, I was watching something the other day, wasn't I? Where I can't remember what it was now, where somebody had got the same name as a character who'd been in it 2 or 3 stories before. But generally, the rule is don't give people the same name. But of course, you work with people in offices all the time. I was at school with 2 people who were called Tamsin Mountford, and they were completely different, and neither of those names was particularly common. And yet, in my year at school, there was 2 people with exactly the same. Now, if it had been Joe Smith, you could maybe understand it. But the idea of course, any office has a number, a couple of Tonys, 2 Janes or whatever. But to have a Doctor Who story where two people have got the same name, and one's called Proper Dave and one's called Other Dave. I just think it's witty and it's fun, and I like the way that O.T. Fagbenle does the explanation, which he did earlier in this, because he's got a lovely dry delivery. Now, he was another actor I encountered at the Royal Exchange and didn't speak to. He was in 6 Degrees of Separation at the Royal Exchange when he was going to be a sort of star of the future, and indeed they were right, because he's become one. So he's made Donna safe, but we've got another, what's happened here? So that's another beautiful bit of mystery. But of course, sometimes in Doctor you do think, why doesn't he just make the companion safe and then get on with his business? And that's exactly what he's done here, and it's led to her being in a further sticky situation, as we will see later. The shadow's gone, but and I like the fact that Mr. Lux is a little bit selfish. And of course, that's the first of the catchphrases, and a catchphrase can be a scary, scary thing. But this is another absolutely terrifying idea, because of course they strip us to the bone. There's no, gas masks are scary, but skeletons are scary. And what's more scary than a skeleton, but a walking skeleton? And of course we've set up the fact that the ghosting can happen, so we can communicate, so that these things can have a voice even when they're dead. It's with Moffat, I'd be fascinated to know what came first, the chicken or the egg. The sci-fi, which part of this sci-fi concept did he dream up first, the Miss Evangelista scene or the skeletons walking around repeating the same thing over and over again? But they all are part of the same idea, and they all meld together absolutely brilliantly. And we have that shocking thing of the skull in the spacesuit. I mean, again, it's one of those simple things of getting something futuristic and Doctor Who-y, a spacesuit, and something primally scary, a skeleton. Combine them together, you've got a walking nightmare. Then have it a slight parody of humanity, because it repeats the same line over and over and over again, and you have a heady combination of utter brilliance and something very Doctor Who. And then we've got really exciting, call back to sort of Captain Jack's gun thing, isn't it? And this, I think the score here is brilliant as well. It really ups the danger, especially as your monster walks quite slowly, but we need it to at this point, and that's fine, because when you're trapped, a slow monster becomes inexorable rather than comical. And I think the way that the pace of this episode now pulls up towards the cliffhanger is absolutely excellent. I think it's really beautifully paced, and just when you think, we come back to the relative calmness of this strange setup, and she says the enigmatic Donna Noble has been saved. And of course, saved, we later discover, is about saved onto a computer. It's again Moffat going, what's a word that means two things, and how can I flourish that brilliantly? And he does brilliantly. And here, turning off boosting the power of the lights in order to keep the shadows at bay, because shadows is darkness, and darkness is scary, especially if you're a kid. So and then we've planted the idea that she's got a sonic screwdriver. I don't give my screwdriver to anyone. I'm not anyone. And so I mean, this is great two-partering, because the mysteries are piling up, but they also feel like they're all leading us somewhere, and they all do. And all of the mysteries aren't just there for window dressing; they're all tied up with the themes and ideas of the story. It's magnificent. And I like, actually, the fact that it's set in a library, because there's something about libraries and books that are recognisable. And here's the final. Oh my! It's Donna, but dead people do that. That's dead people's faces. What has happened to Donna? So it's a real get out of that. It's like a multiple cliffhanger. And I remember some friends not liking this and going, "Oh, it sounds rubbish. Donna Noble has been saved," but she has to have her same accent. Not cadavers don't all speak in RP, and one of them before had an American accent. But also it's supposed to be slightly inhumanly delivered because it's supposed to be a parody of real human speak. That's what makes it disturbing. So those people are wrong. And this is a multiple cliffhanger. What's happened to Donna? They're getting chased by the monster. It's all gone to hell. And boom! Absolutely fantastic. What a brilliant episode. Layer upon layer of mystery. These credits go too fast. But other than that, look, because they go too fast, and it means that they're not solid. They slightly ghost because they, as they zoom up a bit too quickly, they're not as solid and hefty as proper credits. It's like they slightly blur. But that's because of the BBC's desire that closing credits shouldn't last for a particular amount of time, and it's the beginning of the end of the world, and I hate everybody. But I'll watch the next time episode. But smart to have the post credits after the credits for those like certain friends of mine who want to avoid even a clue as to what's going on next. But that's a very, very good next time trailer, and has actually got a lump in my throat because I know what a lot of those revelations are, and there's a lot of them which are big, very moving moments. It's a brilliant episode. It's a brilliant episode of Doctor Who. That I've got to choose my favourite things about it. So what will I choose? I will choose, obviously, the Miss Evangelista scene, the death scene of Miss Evangelista with the ghosting. It's sad, it's funny, it's moving, it's hugely imaginative, it's very Doctor Who. It's an extraordinary piece of writing. I would, if there was a library that keeps things forever, in order to preserve impressive bits of culture, I would preserve that scene forever and ever and ever. I think it's that good. I think it's one of the greatest scenes in all Doctor Who history. I also like Other Dave, Proper Dave. I think that's a brilliant joke. I think it's very amusingly explained. I think the reason for having it makes things seem a bit more realistic, but then it's done wittily as well. It's not just that they're called Dave 1 and Dave 2. There's something about Other Dave and Proper Dave, which is brilliant. And I think it's witty, and I think it's funny, and it's such a sort of obvious thing that nobody's ever done it, which are always the best ones. It's there, and as soon as somebody does it, you go, of course, that's a great way of doing it. Is having two people but making it fun and distinguishing them in a particular way. But I love that. And the third thing, I do like Sarah Niles' node sort of going arg, splog, blog. I think that's, again, it's something that's melds a good sci-fi idea with a smart sense of humour, but an understanding that Doctor Who is at its most disturbing when it takes the familiar and perverts it slightly. And I think that's a prime example of that. I also do think it's a fabulous cast from top to bottom. I think the idea of piranhas is used, the stripping of the chicken bone, I think is absolutely phenomenal. I think that music when the tempo is upped is a lovely score to guide us through the charging, running up and down the library corridors, and we like running up and down corridors. I think the cliffhanger is excellent. I think the idea of shadows being the bad guys. I think the idea of a walking skeleton with the ghosting that's already been set up, then becoming a sort of literal ghosting, even haunting of a walking skeleton. Again, Moffat taking two things that are sort of familiar, a spacesuit type thing and a skeleton, and putting them together and combining them to make the ultimate sort of Doctor Who monster, something that is futuristic but also ancient, scary, lumbering, but also again a slight perversion of humanity, which again makes it all the more disturbing because it's kind of familiar. It's much more disturbing than somebody with a rubber head, or spoons for a forehead or whatever, or just big teeth. And yes, and the production design I think is excellent. The lighting is terrific. The lighting is beautiful. But I think I'm going to go for the Run, for God's Sake, Run, arg, splarg, blarg, because I just think there's nothing like it anyway. You don't get anything like it anyway. And it's another example of Moffat throwing in something that looks like just a kind of, a fun bit of sci-fi window dressing that then comes to bite us at the end because Donna's face appears in the node herself, and it leads us into the next episode with a mystery to solve and a worry and a fear. And he's so good at deploying that stuff and getting us looking one way at it, i.e., this is just to help give us some context as to the fact that something has gone wrong in the library, to actually becoming a part of the drama and a part of the danger. So, Miss Evangelista's death, Other Dave and Proper Dave, and the node and the manner of explaining, and reporting. Because I love a Doctor Who scene where, like in the Web of Fear and the Sea Devils, when you hear people at the other end of a radio going, "Oh, they're coming in, they're ah!" I mean, that's really terrifying stuff because it's like you're trapped behind glass and you can't do anything to help them, and you can hear them, but you can't. There's all sorts of that plays on all sorts of different fears and worries and our humanity as well. And I think that plays to that as well. So yes, but what are the three favourite things of the lovely Richard Smith from the excellent Something Who podcast? Silence in the Library, Three Things his file is called. Let's play it.
Toby asked me to choose three things about this story. Three things that stood out, I guess, about each episode. And for the first episode, Silence in the Library, I've picked, number one, Donna's empathy for Miss Evangelista. She's a minor character. Even the story doesn't really say a lot about her. But Donna takes a moment to be kind to Miss Evangelista when nobody else has any time for her at all. It's a small moment, but it's a good one.
Yeah, and I think that's important because I think sometimes we think of Stephen Moffat as being the clever guy, the quippy guy, the sarky guy. And I know people who, see him interviewed on telly who think he comes across as arrogant and full of himself. My encounters with Stephen Moffat, I've always found him very humble, very generous, very self-effacing. And I think sometimes people, and because remember, when you're being interviewed on television, there's an onus on you to try and be entertaining. And I think people who aren't socially hugely confident sometimes can be read wrongly. And my worst fear is being thought of as being, smug or full of myself. But I know that sometimes when I'm performing, I have to put on confidence, and I might do that in an awkward way, and that might read that way. But believe me, I'm not. So I have sympathy for Stephen Moffat in that sense, because I genuinely don't. My impressions of him in the times that I've met him have been somebody actually quite self-effacing and slightly awkward even. And so it saddens me when I see people read him and his writing as being smart ass. And although he is very good at writing these brilliant quippy characters because he's got a gift for it. But that doesn't mean that that's how he feels of himself. But listen, he doesn't need me to stick up for him. He's a multi-billionaire who's a massive success. So who I'm sure has every reason not to give a monkeys. But as I say, he's always been very kind and generous to me, and I also and I think that it behoves us therefore to pay attention to those moments when he shows that there's more to him than the quickfire, smart alecky, timey-wimey guy, when he allows those moments of kindness. And actually, yes, the making of the whole Miss Evangelista character, I mean, it would leave a much more nasty taste in the mouth if we didn't have that brilliant moment. And Donna, of course, it's important for Donna because she's gobby and she's selfish and she's headstrong to be empathic. And Catherine Tate negotiates that stuff, I think, pitch perfectly. And yeah, that moment where she's kind to Miss Evangelista, I think, is a really small moment, but it's key to making the episode and the characters work, and it is beautiful. It really is beautiful. And small beautiful things is what life and Doctor Who is all about.
The second is Alex Kingston. River Song bursts into this story. She has supreme confidence and she isn't intimidated by the Doctor. In the hands of another actor, River could be an irritating character, but Alex Kingston makes her appealing even at the same time as she's being infuriating. Some people don't like her, but for me she's a fantastic character, a full-blooded woman rather than a screaming girl, brilliantly brought to life. I feared we'd seen the last of her when David Tennant moved on, but I was delighted to see her return in Series 5.
Now, you see, this is my problem, is that I think Alex Kingston is great, and I think she does what Catherine Tate does, which is straddles the needs of that character. She's fun and she's sassy and she's sarky and she's quippy, but she also has that great humanity, and I think it's not as easy as it looks, and lesser actors in both of those parts would be one note and alienating. And as Richard said, I know some people who don't like River Song. I think I can't. Maybe I need to talk to my ex-wife. We're still on civil terms, because I remember her saying she wasn't wild about River Song, and my ex-wife is sort of quite feministly minded, and very conscious of how women are portrayed on television, and I think was not wild about some portrayals of women in Doctor Who. But I don't want to put words into her mouth because this was a long time ago. But I seem to think she sort of thought the sassy female was a sort of a bit of a male fantasy in a way. But it's hard, isn't it? Because if you then go against that and make a female who's the opposite of that, people say, oh well, it's somebody who's not self-assured and always needs rescuing. So it's very, very difficult. So I tend to go into these things with good faith and go, if a writer is trying to do their best to make a character, irrespective of their gender, their colour, their background or whatever, they're trying to make characters that you like to watch and that will be interesting and good and played by good actors, will be multifaceted. And I think it sometimes, if we look at characters having to represent a certain thing, well, we're stuffed before we start, because they might represent one thing at the detriment of another, or if then the writer might then go, well, but now I can't make them do this because they're representative of all women, and some women would take offence that a woman is shown to do that. Well, she's not a woman. I mean, she is, but she's also an archaeologist and a time traveller and this, that, and the other in the way that we're all individuals. Now, I know obviously representation is slightly different on television, but I think it behoves us to step away from assuming that a character is always a comment on a particular group, rather than we write really interesting characters and get good actors to play them, and then we can take the characters for all their different shades of grey in terms of morality and motive and everything else. But my problem is, of course, because she's become such a mainstay, in the same way that I sometimes overlook the actor playing the Doctor. David Tennant is brilliant in that episode, by the way. I'm more likely to dig deep and do research into a Vord than I am into Peter Purvis, and that's my fault, because I think I've always dug on the person that might be overlooked. So I'm always on the lookout less for the things that are front and centre. So that's maybe why I've done Alex Kingston a disservice in that commentary, because she doesn't need any help from me, whereas I think maybe proper Dave does.
The third thing is Dr. Moon's warning. Dr. Moon is talking to the girl, and he says, what I want you to remember is this, and I know it's hard. The real world is a lie, and your nightmares are real. The library is real. There are people trapped in there, people who need to be saved. The shadows are moving again. Those people are depending on you. Only you can save them. Only you. It's the sort of thing that you wonder about as a child. Are the dreams real? Or is real life only when you're awake? And Moffat is using that half-remembered concern and turning it on its head. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant, and you know what? I hadn't really thought of it in that way. I do think those cutaway scenes are artfully inserted into it. And I think, and it would be a cheat if it was just a dream or they were just figments of somebody's imagination or whatever. And he actually manages to give you a payoff that means that none of that is bullshit, if you like. It's as real, that is real to them. Dr. Moon is a thing that serves the purpose that he serves. Cal, the girl Cal, we'll talk about it in episode 2, but the payoff is not a cheat because you don't want it to be a cheat. You know that the library can't be a figment of her imagination because we know it's filled with people that we know in our universe that we're watching are real. We know the Doctor is real, but you still don't want that to be some sort of just some cheat, some conceit, but actually it's not. It's tied up with the whole of the storytelling. Again, a science fiction idea given humanity, given flesh and bone and sweat and tears, and it's rather touching, but also fiendishly clever. But we don't know what it's about yet, but they could just be slightly tedious cutaways where we go, yeah, we get the message. But actually, every time we go there, it's rather important. We're either fed a different bit of information or it gives us something that makes the drama escalate or the tension, or gives us a little bit of information that makes us go, wah. It's very cleverly done. Often in stories like this where they have a conceit like that, it's just a bit of sort of it's frills around the edges that has the episode to be told in a slightly different way, but definitely isn't as organic to the story as this. And I think again this is brilliant. I think it's a superb episode. I think it's pretty much flawless in terms of its pacing, its imagination, the ideas behind it, its resolution. I could have chosen any number of things as my favourite things, as indeed could Richard, and we both chose completely different things. So I'm a loser, baby. But there's so much in that. It's a really clever, but also exciting. It's old-fashioned excitement. You've got a skeleton chasing people who aren't allowed to stay in the shadows, and the little bits of dust in the light are space piranhas. Absolutely incredible. But mostly for me that Miss Evangelista scene, which is everything Doctor Who has potential to be, that I never knew it did. I love classic Doctor Who, but I'm not sure there's a scene quite like that in classic Doctor Who. What Moffat's done there is he's taken this wonderful, brilliant show and done something more sophisticated with it that absolutely fits in with what the show is supposed to do, which is supposed to excite, to move, to challenge, to do something a bit different, a bit left field, but also always remind us, I think, of what it means to be human. That's essentially what Doctor Who boils down to by showing us all of the terrible things, is that amidst all the terrible things, our humanity, our sense of humour, our sense of the individual is what separates us from the darkness, which, as we know, is out to get us. And I struggle to watch or talk about that scene without actually getting a bit teary, a bit. Well, that's never mind the Dewey Decimal System. It's my dewy eyes that are cataloguing this particular library. And for now, the rest is silence. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Richard Smith, who you can find on Twitter/X at Richard1J1Smith and at something_who. That is his Doctor Who podcast, which is well worth checking out. I'm grateful to Richard and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Simon Coling, Ben Cook, Martin Cook, Matt Corner, Leslie Coots, Ben Cowdell, Philip Craggs, Oliver Crocker, Sarah Kropzer, David Crew, Steve Cunniff, Dave Curran, Simon Curtis, Paul Philip Dahlgren, Rob Dawson, John Davey, Chris Davies, Hugh Davies, Robert Davies, Shanty Day, Ian Dean, Tim Dickinson, Sean Ditchfield, Drew, Andrew East, Jeff Edwards, Andrew Egan, Patrick Emery, Jonathan Evans, Bill Evanson, Simon Farquhar, Jasper Ferguson, Fleet Boy, Mark Findlay Smith, and Philip Fitchett. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. I would adore it if you could sign up to my Patreon, which starts as little as £3 a month for all the bonus material that resides there, which includes advance releases of all of these podcasts. Some I aim to have about 6 months ahead. Doesn't always work out as my schedule runs away with me, but there's also exclusive podcasts and exclusive monthly, at least once a month, Ask Me Anythings, and also behind the scenes videos of the Blu-ray and DVD shenanigans that I get up to, and lots of other sort of bits of access, sometimes interviews from my archive, all sorts of other bits and bobs. So please do go there. £3 a month for usually 3 releases a week, although that quietened down in June and July because I had a book out, you know. Oh yes, buy my book, The Quatermass Experiment, from 10 Acre Films. But I still like to think you got £3 a month's worth, and you can always go up the ladder and pay more than that if you think it's an embarrassment of riches. You can also go to kofi.com/Toby Haydock if you just want to do a one-off payment every now and again and not be signed up for a monthly commitment. You can also support my output by liking and subscribing to me everywhere that is possible. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I even have a YouTube channel where these reside as well. Please, like and subscribe to my YouTube. I'm going to try and get better at that and putting videos up and things. The podcasts go up there, but it's only the audio versions with placeholder graphics. But I was told to do that. But they're largely available on podcast outlets too. But like and subscribe anywhere, and that would be appreciated. But the main thing that you can do, and this costs you absolutely nothing at all, is to give these 5 stars and a few lines of review wherever you can, because that helps to just make them more noticeable by passing trade. Thanks. I like to get the attention of passing trade, and you can take that metaphor wherever you like. So I'm all over social media. I am still on Twitter X. I'm sorry if that makes me a bad person, but I like to think I'm doing it in order to keep tabs on Miss Evangelista's ex-husband. I'm also on Blue Sky, Toby Haydock, at Toby Haydock. The Twitter actually has 2 of me as at Toby Haydock, and it also has at Haydock Podcasts. So if you're just interested in this stuff and not the comedy and other bits and bobs that I do, you can stay pure at Haydock Podcasts. I have a Facebook page, not my personal one. Don't go there because it's full, but I've tried to branch out and have one that is about my work, and you can tell the difference between the two because the one that's about my work has me in black and white in a hat. And you can also find me on Instagram at toby.haydock. I'm everywhere really, apart from TikTok, and probably loads of ones that I've never heard of. So there we are. I've really enjoyed that. I hope you did too. I had any number. I was going to do Enlightenment. I was in the mood to do Enlightenment not long ago when Barbara Clegg died, and I wrote her obituary for The Guardian and did various other bits and bobs. And I did watch it a bit then. I thought I should do Enlightenment next, and then I didn't. So then I brought that forward in the schedule. I quite fancied doing The Ark. And then I've listened to a couple of podcasts recently about The Invasion. Wheezing, Groaning Sound and Hamster with a Blunt Penknife have both done The Invasion. So I was going to do The Invasion, and then I realised, well, I've just done the War Games in colour, which would be 2 Troughtons and 2 Troughtons very close to each other. So and then I just thought, I quite fancy watching Silence in the Library. So I just have, and I hope you liked it, and I hope all is well with you. And I'm now going to shut up. But thanks for listening.